Hello everyone and welcome to Attachment Lesson 2, where we're going to be looking at Schaffers stages of attachment. So this is Rudolf Schaffer. In the previous lesson we focused on the start of attachment. Specifically, we looked at caregiver-infant interactions in the form of reciprocity and interactional synchrony. This lesson is now more going to focus on how the attachment develops over time. So it involves a key study by Schaffer and Emerson, in which they were interested in the development of attachment and the behavior that kind of comes with that development of attachment. Subsequently, they proposed 4 stages of attachment, and that is what we're going to have a look at in the second half of this video. Okay, so section 1, the research conducted by Schaffer and Emerson in 1964. Now, whilst this isn't a study that is specifically named on the spec, it is still an important study because it helps you to understand where the actual stages came from, and just in case you ever get asked to outline any study into caregiver-infant interactions or into the stages of attachment, then this would be one that you could use. So, Schaffer and Emerson in 1964 were interested in the development of early attachment. Specifically, they were interested in the age at which attachments develop their emotional intensity. So they were primarily interested in towards whom the emotional intensity is directed. So their research was fairly simple. Their sample consisted of 60 babies, 31 males and 29 females, all from working class families in Glasgow, aged between 5 and 23 weeks at the start of the investigation. The researchers visited the mothers and babies at their home every month for the first 12 months, and then again at 18 months. And the researchers interviewed the mothers about their children's protest in 7 separate separation situations. So, for example, how does the baby react when mother leaves the room, which is looking at a particular type of separation anxiety. The researchers were also interested in stranger anxiety as well, which is how does the baby react when an unfamiliar adult enters the room. And both of these were designed to measure the baby's attachment to its mother. And they found that at around 25 to 32 weeks, 50% of the children showed separation anxiety towards their mothers. Furthermore, they found that by 40 weeks, 80% of the children had a specific attachment, and 30% of them had started to form multiple attachments. So a specific attachment means that they looked like they were attached to one particular person, whereas a multiple attachment suggests that they show an attachment behavior towards 2 or more people. So the results suggest that attachment develops through a series of stages across the first year of life, and that each stage kind of brings with it a different degree of anxiety in a variety of situations like separation or stranger anxiety. And it was this study that then led to the development of what's now called Schaffer's stages of attachment. So the research led to Schaffer and Emerson proposing that attachment develops in 4 stages. You have the asocial stage that comes first. Then, between the ages of 2 and 6 months, they're in the indiscriminate attachment stage. The third attachment stage is the specific attachment, and then the final stage is multiple attachments, which tends to occur after the age of 1. So if we just have a look at what those individual stages actually involve. So, in the asocial stage, in the first few weeks of a baby's life, an infant shows a similar response to objects and people when it comes to attachment behavior. Although towards the end of this stage, they do tend to display a preference for faces and eyes, and they do show some preference for familiar adults. In general, inanimate objects and humans are treated in the same way. In the indiscriminate stage, which occurs between the ages of 2 and 7 months usually, the infant now shows a preference for human company over non-human company. They display more social behavior, and they can also distinguish between different people. Generally though, they are still comforted indiscriminately, as in they are comforted by anybody easily, and they don't show any form of stranger anxiety yet. When they get beyond 7 months, they start to head into the specific attachment stage, and in this stage an infant shows a preference for one particular caregiver. They display separation and stranger anxiety, and the infant looks to that particular person for security and protection. The infant also shows joy upon reunion with that caregiver, and they are generally comforted by them as well. Then, when they get beyond the specific attachment stage, they are heading towards the multiple attachment stage. And in this stage, attachment behaviors are now displayed towards several different people. So, for example, siblings, grandparents, mum and dad, and so on. And they're sometimes referred to as secondary attachments. They typically form in the first month or two after the primary attachment is formed, and the number of multiple attachments that develop generally depends on the social circle to which the infant is exposed. Okay, so let's move on to a couple of evaluation points. I've got 4 for you, but they're all fairly short, and then you can choose the ones that you would like to use for yourself. So the first evaluation point is that Schaffer's research has got good external validity. The observations were made by the parents during everyday activities. The researchers weren't there, which means the babies were unlikely to be distracted or have been made to feel anxious by the presence of a stranger. So that means that participants will have generally behaved naturally while they were being observed, and that means that the results can be generalized to everyday situations. So nice little strength to start you off there. However, you do have a counterpoint to that first strength, and that is that asking mothers to be observers is a bit tricky because they're unlikely to be objective. So it might be they miss something specific, or they forget to report things. So for example, they might not have noticed if their baby was showing signs of anxiety, or they might have misremembered it. So that means that even if babies behave naturally, their behavior might not necessarily have been accurately recorded and fed back to the researchers. Another limitation is that the asocial stage is very, very difficult to measure and study. So young babies lack a lot of coordination and they are fairly immobile. So if a baby that's less than 2 months old felt anxiety in an everyday situation, they might have displayed it in quite a subtle and hard to observe way. So that might make it difficult for mothers to actually report back to researchers on signs of anxiety in this particular age group because they might just not have seen it. So that means that babies may actually be quite social, but because of the flawed methods and because of the difficulty in studying this particular stage, they might just appear to be asocial. Okay, and then we will end with a strength, and that is real-world applications. So another strength of Schaffer and Emerson stages is that they have practical applications in daycare. So we know that babies that go into daycare during the indiscriminate stage, let's say, are likely to be easily cared for and comforted by any skilled adult. However, we also know that if infants are to start daycare, it may be a little bit problematic during the specific attachment stage because they're going to show increased levels of stranger anxiety, and they're also going to show increased levels of separation anxiety. So that means that parents can actually use Schaffer's stages of development to plan when to take their children to daycare so that it is as seamless as possible. And that is the end of this short video. I don't have any exam questions for you for this one for 2 reasons. Number one, there haven't been that many that have come up yet. Also, the ones that have come up, they tend to be very, very simple. For example, name 3 stages of attachment proposed by Schaffer for 3 marks. That is really the only one that has come up specifically related to this topic. However, obviously it goes without saying that you can get any number of questions for this particular one in the future. So you could get evaluate Schaffer stages of attachment, you could have name and describe one of Schaffer's stages of attachment. You could have all kinds of stuff. Remember, you're not going to get a question that specifically asks you about Schaffer and Emerson's research because it's not named on the spec. However, you should still know it just in case you can use it for something in the exam. Okay? So, it's been a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but I hope it's all made sense and I hope it's been useful. Please put any questions that you might have in the comment section below and I will do my best to get back to you ASAP. Thank you very much for listening and I hope it's been useful. Thank you.